very good audience. You obey perfectly. Well, I want to thank Shirley very much for that kind introduction. I should say Congresswoman Pettis, but old friends are allowed to use first names. It's such a treat to see Shirley today, and Ben, and all your very good friends and family. I want to thank all of you for a very warm welcome as well. A special thanks goes to Dr. Lynn Behrens, president of Loma Linda University, as well as the wonderful students and faculty who are making me feel very, very welcome today. And I'm also glad to see Congressman Jerry Lewis and Pete McCloskey. I'm not sure, Pete, you and George always got along, but he loves you as a friend. Is that about right? Finally, a special thank you is in order for Myra Hanna for all of her hard work in making today a reality. You know, I feel quite honored to be your speaker, as Congresswoman Pettis Robeson and I have been friends for many, many years. Thinking about the amount of time that has passed since we first met reminds me of the story of two elderly ladies who'd been friends for many decades. Over the years, they shared all kinds of activities and adventures. Lately, their activities had been limited, playing bridge several times a week. One day, they were playing cards when one looked over at the other and said, "Now, don't get mad at me. I know we've been friends for a long, long time. I just can't think of your name." Said, "I've thought a long, long time, and I just can't remember it. Please tell me what your name is." And her friend glared at her for at least 3 minutes. And finally she said, "How soon do you need to know?" Not so funny when you're 82, I'll tell you. You must be wondering what this has to do with the call to leadership. Absolutely nothing at all. But let me repeat that I'm happy to be here today with you and with my beautiful friend Shirley. See, I do remember her name. Now let's get down to business. You know, I often joke that my successful life has been a result of marrying well. To be honest, it's not a joke, but indeed the truth. My fulfilling life, full of wonderful friends, truly is because I made the most important decision of my life, and that was to marry George Bush. And having just watched that amazing video on the Pettises makes me wonder why on earth you invited me at all. You do understand, don't you, that I married one president, I gave birth to another, and I was never a president. One night, I absolutely couldn't sleep and found myself thinking about what I've learned in life, sometimes the hard way, and what I really would like my children to know from these experiences. So while I may not have served in Congress myself or been a CEO of a large company, I'd like to share with you some of the things I've learned which I feel define a successful life. Remember, that includes 82 years of life, 62 years of marriage to George Bush, 6 children, 17 grandchildren, 5 wars, 4 dress sizes, 2 governors. That's not funny. Two governors, 5 parachute jumps, 1 aircraft carrier, and now 2 presidents. So maybe some of this will make sense to you. Try to find the good in people and not the bad. When someone once asked the Red Cross founder, Clara Barton, if she remembered a wrong a friend had done to her years before, and Clara said very firmly, "I distinctly remember forgetting that." Or as George put it, "Isn't it better to make a friend than an enemy?" And they were both right. Do not buy what you cannot afford. Don't try to live up to your neighbors, and be sure you pay people back. What matters most is how you treat others, not what you have. Value your friends and remember that loyalty is a two-way street. My George is the best example in the world of that particular truth. Love your children. George and I have loved ours more than life itself. Remember what Robert Fulghum wrote. Don't worry that your children never listen to you. Worry that they're always watching you. My father gave me much the same advice about parenting just before I was married. He said there were three very important things in life that you should give your children: the best education in the world, set a good example, and all the love that you have. Enjoy life as much as you possibly can. You really only have two choices. You can like it or you can dislike it. I choose to like it, just as Shirley has done. No matter what our problems, we can always find people who are worse off than we are. Help them and forget self. And above all, seek God. There is absolutely no downside. God will come to you if you look and ask. Now, seeing as we have many students and professors here today, the true definition of keeping your feet on the ground through the successes of life can be best illustrated by the following story. One day, an expert in time management was speaking to a group of business students, and to drive home a point, he used an illustration those students will never forget. As he stood in front of the group of high-powered overachievers, he said, "Okay, time for a quiz." He pulled out a 1-gallon, wide-mouthed mason jar and set it on the table in front of him. Then he produced a dozen fist-sized rocks and carefully placed them one by one in the jar. When the jar was filled to the top and no more rocks would fit inside, he asked, "Is this jar full?" Everyone in the class said yes. Then he said, "Really?" He reached under the table and pulled out a bucket of gravel. Then he dumped some gravel in, shook the jar, causing the pieces of gravel to work themselves down into the spaces between the big rocks. Then he asked the group once more, "Is this jar full?" By this time, the class, of course, was on to him. "Probably not," one of them answered. "Good," he replied. He reached under the table and brought out a bucket of sand, and he started dumping the sand in the jar, and it went into all of the spaces left between the rocks and the gravel. And once more he asked the question, "Is this jar full?" "No," the class shouted. Again he said, "Good." Then he grabbed a pitcher of water and began to pour it in until the jar was filled to the brim. Then the expert in time management looked at the class and asked, "What's the point of this illustration?" One eager beaver raised his hand and said, "The point is, no matter how full your schedule is, if you try really hard, you can always fit more things into it." "No," said the speaker, "that is not the point. The truth this illustration teaches us is this: if you don't put the big rocks in first, you'll never get them in at all." What are the big rocks in your life? Your children, your loved ones, your education, your dreams, a worthy cause, teaching or mentoring others, doing things that you love, your health, your significant other. Remember to put these big rocks in first, or you'll never get them in at all. If you sweat the little stuff, the gravel, the sand, you will fill your life with little worries that don't really matter. Then you'll never have the real quality time you need to spend on the big stuff. So tonight or in the morning, when you're reflecting on this short story, ask yourself, what are the big rocks in my life? Then put those in your jar first. The big rocks will bring you greater joy and happiness than any sand or pebbles. Thank you very, very much.